Welcome aboard the Southern Vectis Needles Breezer and what is widely reputed to be one of Britain's most spectacular bus rides. This commentary will point out places of interest and historical significance which you may care to visit along the route. If you wish to leave the vehicle at any point, then please just press one of the bells located in either saloon, and remember, you may hop on and off the vehicle as often as you like. We begin in the historic town of Yarmouth. Once called Yarmouth, meaning muddy estuary, this is believed to be the site of a Celtic settlement prior to the Roman occupation. In the 12th century, a town was built here by the Norman Baron de Redvers, who bestowed the first charter upon the town in 1135. Some 200 years later, Yarmouth was subjected to a series of attacks by the French, who sailed into the Solent and ransacked the town, and repeated this in the 16th century. This persuaded Henry VIII that a castle was needed to protect that part of the island from attack. The castle was completed in 1547, and since then, Yarmouth has been free from French or any other invasion. Over to your right, you will be able to see the path of the old Isle of Wight steam railway line, which ran 12 miles from Freshwater through Yarmouth before terminating at Newport. This line was opened in 1889 by the Freshwater, Yarmouth and Newport Railway, and was closed in 1953 following a public inquiry. One of the original locomotives on the line, number 2 Freshwater, which was built in 1876 and was purchased in 1917 after a few years on loan, still survives to this day in a restored condition on the Isle of Wight Steam Railway in Haven Street. The country lane to your left will take you through the picturesque villages of Wellow and Thorley, the latter being home to St Swithin's Church. There has been a church in Thorley since medieval times, the porch of which still survives, close to Thorley Manor. The replacement church was built a short distance to the east during the 19th century. Far ahead, and to both left and right, you will be able to see where the downs rise above the flat, fertile farmland. These low, rolling chalk hills form a natural backbone to the whole of the island and are a unique habitat to many species of wildlife. Charles Dickens said after a visit, "From the top of the highest down, there are views which are only to be equalled on the Genoese shore of the Mediterranean." It is possible to start at the Needles viewpoint at the end of Tennyson Down and walk the 26 miles to Culver Down above Sandown, following country footpaths nearly all the way and crossing a road only some half a dozen times. This route is often referred to as the roof of the island, and walking along it has been described as flying low over the whole landscape, only more exceptional because of the wild flowers, birds and butterflies. As you travel around the island, you will notice the large number of copses, woods and forests. 9% of the island is wooded, and half of that is ancient woodland. The island is one of only 4 places in Britain where the endangered red squirrel is thriving. With an estimated island population of 3,500, the Solent provides a natural barrier from the outcompeting and stronger American grey squirrel. Anyone found to be releasing a grey squirrel, a mortal enemy of the red, could be fined up to £5,000 and jailed for 2 years. If you look across the road and onto your left, you'll be able to see the site of the world-famous Isle of Wight Pop Festival of August 1970. This was, at the time, the largest pop festival ever held outside America, and is still referred to today as the mother of all festivals. This was also one of the last places the legendary Jimi Hendrix performed live. Jimi played East Afton Farm on August 30th, and 19 days later, tragically died. The attendance of this festival to this day remains the highest attendance for any music event in the country, with over 600,000 people turning up for the festivities. It currently ranks at number 7 in the world's most attended concerts, with only the likes of Rod Stewart and Jean-Michel Jarre overtaking the 600,000 figure. be entering Freshwater Bay. The bay has been hewn from the chalk cliffs that surround it by thousands of years of exposure to the waves and the small river that runs from here to Yarmouth. Smugglers once used the caves around the bottom of the chalk cliffs, and these can be seen during low tides. Here at Freshwater Bay, you can stroll along the pebble beach and enjoy a meal and ice cream at one of the many cafes. From here you can join the Tennyson Trail, which leads to the top of Tennyson Down, and eventually onto Allen Bay and the Needles. At the top of the down, at a height of 147 metres, stands a huge granite cross commemorating the life of Alfred Lord Tennyson. From here, on a clear day, it is possible to see Old Harry Rocks and the Isle of Purbeck to the west, Yarmouth and Lymington to the north, and to the east much of the Solent, as well as a large part of the western half of the Isle of Wight and St Catherine's Point, some 20 kilometres away across Bryston Bay. The next stop is for the imposing Dimbola Lodge, which houses a museum dedicated to the life and works of the pioneering 19th century portrait photographer Julia Margaret Cameron. The gift of a camera in 1863 sparked Julia Cameron's interest in photography, and it was from her home and studio at Dimbola that the greatest of the Cameron photographs were made. The house is now open to the public and contains an exhibition of many of her works, a Victorian dressing-up room, as well as an exhibition of Isle of Wight pop festivals past and present. Over to the left, we will shortly pass the quaint and beautiful St Agnes Church, which was built with stone from a derelict old building in 1908, on land donated by Hallam Tennyson, who was the second Governor-General of Australia and son of Alfred Lord Tennyson. It is the only thatched church on the island. Over to the left are the extensive grounds of the Farringford estate. This stunning building was the home of Alfred Lord Tennyson for 40 years, from 1853 until 1892. As you view the approach to Farringford via the sweeping drive flanked by mature trees, you will appreciate why Alfred Lord Tennyson chose this immensely charming house as his home. In the autumn of 1853, Alfred and Emily searched the Isle of Wight, determined to find a quiet retreat where Alfred could write. On seeing Farringford, an imposing late 18th century house with Gothic-style windows, castellated walls, extensive secluded grounds, and breathtaking scenery, he said, "We will go no further. This must be our home." And so it was, for some 40 years. Tennyson wrote many of his most famous works in the library here, including Idylls of the King, his version of the Arthurian legend, and that library still houses a collection of mementos of his life. He was a famous figure, striding in hat and cloak over the downs where he loved to walk. He said that the sea air he breathed when up on the downs was worth 6pence a pint. We are now approaching Freshwater Village, which is the main shopping area that serves the west of the Isle of Wight. The parish of Freshwater was established in Saxon times. At this time, parishes on the island tended to be large and stretched from the north to south coasts. This ensured that each parish possessed a mixture of soil types that gave good agricultural land, woodland and downland. Freshwater is one of the largest parishes on the Isle of Wight, with a population of almost 5,400. It has an infant school, a library, a sports centre with a gymnasium and swimming pool, a skate park, and a large recreation ground with a comprehensive range of play equipment. Freshwater has some great benefits: clean, fresh air, miles of footpaths and bridleways, many of them through areas of outstanding natural beauty, Good beaches with safe bathing and facilities for most other sports, from horse riding to paragliding. In 1635, Robert Hooke was born in Freshwater, the son of John Hooke Senior, who was the curate at Freshwater Church. Robert Hooke moved to London in 1648 and was educated at Westminster School before taking up a poor scholar's place at Christ Church, Oxford. He is credited with the invention of the watch balance spring, the development of microscopes, and most famously with the design of many London buildings, in collaboration with Sir Christopher Wren following the Great Fire of London in 1666. The road on the right, opposite the War Memorial, will take you down to Totland Bay. It was not far from here, in the late 1890s, that the radio pioneer Guglielmo Marconi set up the first wireless transmitting station. The first readable transmissions took place between this station and a ship at sea on November 6, 1897. By June 1898, the service had advanced so far that it was possible for Lord Kelvin to send the first paid Marconigram from this station. The station has long since disappeared, but a granite memorial marks the site and can be found near to the viewpoint within the Allen Bay landmark attraction.
توتلاند اشوفها في توتلاند
هذه مكان وين؟
ها؟
هذه مكان وين ما يعرف شو
انت اكيد
انا ابو ليش تذكر قبل ما السيارة قبل ما توصل؟ ما قال لي ارد
حاجز لا يلا احجز لك يعرف انه ماشي يصل. لا حط شيء لازم اخذ لها شيء.
انا اطلع ما طلعت كل شيء بس انت لو تمين معي وتروحين معي قاعد اكبر خيال لف شايفه دول العالم كلها والله تشوفينها تشوفين الدنيا انا ما كنت عايش
The next building on your left was once the clubhouse to the old Freshwater Bay Golf Club, which closed in 1939, although the outline of some of the old T's is still visible on the down behind. This down is called Heddon Hill and is also known as Heddon Warren, which was once the site of a rabbit farm colony. Rabbits were once called conies and were not indigenous to the island, as the Normans introduced them here. Later, they were brought over from the mainland by the coney man and became an important source of meat to the local people, being bred and farmed by a warrener. Up to this time, foxes also were not native to the island, and for anyone to have released a fox, the punishment was deportation to the colonies. Another animal not originally found on the island was the hare, later introduced by Sir Edward Horsey, who offered a young lamb in exchange for each breeding hare. The hares were then used for hunting.
لازم نجدد الجواز، بعد ما نجدد الجواز نسوي فيزا حق بريطانيا وحق امريكا.
ليش اسويها عليك سنة؟
مشكلة طيب انتم تسوينها 10 سنوات.
اسمعني انا قصدي انا بسوي الثنتين انا قصدي
زين اوكي انا بعد بسوي.
اسمعي شو بقول لك، سوها وخلي المستلم الجواز مثلا تصير لك صح؟
يا بنت الحين حق شو يستلم الجواز؟ ترى انا بسويها وبستلم الجواز، شو المشكلة؟
بصراحة تستلم الأكريتين؟
ترى ما يطول حبيبتي، ترى يطول بيجيبون عن بيت تراهم.
لا انت ما فهمتني، انت بتروح لندن فانا اجيب جوازك ونسافر من هناك
ان شاء الله. ان شاء الله.
تفضل من مرة حتى جوازك
شلنا ان شاء الله.
حمار وحلوة انا يعني
خلاص فهمت عليك.
فهمت علي؟
ان شاء الله.
اسوي الفيزا وخلي المستلم انا
ان شاء الله.
بستلمه وطبعا انا بجي لندن بيس لندن وبستلم
ان شاء الله. اوكي.
صدق انا رماس.
زين اوكي. شو نقدر شو نسوي؟ إذا هذا مثلا بتروحين بسوي مارشال مني برا الصغار الأمريكية بسوي.
وين هني هذا؟
We will shortly arrive at the Needles landmark attraction, where you will find glass blowing demonstrations, a 4D cinema, mini golf course and a sweet factory. Here you may buy the famous coloured sands of Allen Bay and take a chairlift ride down to the beach and back. There are also amusements, refreshments, ice creams and a gift shop. This is also the stop for the Needles Pleasure Cruise. For a small fee, you can choose between a 20-minute slow cruise to view the Needles Rocks and Lighthouse, coloured sands of Allen Bay, dramatic chalk cliff face and the surrounding coastal features, or a 15-minute fast trip on the high-speed rib. Whichever option you choose, you're guaranteed a breathtaking experience. Customers for the Needles Old and New batteries and clifftop viewpoints should remain on the bus.
لازم اخذ بلدون.
ساعتين.
ها؟
وين يميل الساعة؟
لازم اخذ شيء يعني ويا الراس. بيجيني لأنه شمس عشان شيء ولازم اكل شيء.
ليه ما كان مدور هيك؟
مين ينزلون؟
شفت كلها عبوسة، هاي ترى مالتي، بس كلها عبوسة. خبري احنا وياهم يخبرونا يوم يدرون يصيرون يخبرونا يعلمونا ما وين يصيرون.
just about to depart Allen Bay and make our way up the cliff road to the Needles batteries and viewpoint. Please bear in mind, however, that from here on we will encounter high hedgerows and parts of the cliff face are susceptible to high winds, so please be aware, especially if you are sitting on the outside part of the upper deck. Coming into view shortly, over to the right, is the chairlift, which takes passengers down to the beach at Allen Bay. Weather permitting, there is sometimes a trip around the bay in a small boat, which will take you all the way out to the Needles. This name came from Needle Rock, a 120 feet high column of rock, which was also known as Lot's Wife. This column fell into the sea during a storm in 1764, the stump of which can still be seen at low tide. From then on, the site was known as the Needles. The Needles Lighthouse was built in the 1850s and is still operational today, although it is now unmanned as it became fully automated in 1994. On a clear day, you can see the whole way along the south coast, from Southampton to Bournemouth there in the distance. Across the Solent, you can see the estuary that leads into Lymington Harbour and the flat plain of the New Forest, which still covers some 92,000 acres. We will shortly be approaching the Needles Old Battery, which was originally built in 1863 to protect against invasion by the French. West White was particularly well defended, with Fort Redoubt at Freshwater Bay, the Needles Battery, and a further 5 fortifications around the coast towards Yarmouth. These fortifications were built during the 19th century by Lord Palmerston's government, and as none of them fired a shot in anger until World War I, they were known as Palmerston's Follies. Here at the Old Battery, visitors can access a 60-metre tunnel cut through the chalk, which leads to a searchlight emplacement and gives an up-close view of the Needles rocks. 2 of the original gun barrels are on display in the parade ground, and there are several exhibitions, including one by comic book artist Jeff Campion, who used to draw for the Eagle and Lion comics. The surrounding headlands, encompassing both the old and new batteries, are now in the care of the National Trust. The Needles new battery was built in 1893, after more powerful guns were starting to be used, prompted by concerns that vibration from the larger guns of the old battery would cause the cliffs to collapse and bring it. As we climb up the hill, you will notice the Coast Guard lookout tower, nowadays staffed mainly by Coast Watch volunteers, keeping the coastline safe, especially during events such as the Round the Island race and Cows Week. As we continue our climb up to the Needles, you will see the old Coast Guard cottages. These cottages are named after 3 local shipwrecks, Pomone, Irex and Varvassi. We are now approaching the turning point and the underground rooms of the Needles new battery. If you follow the road around the corner, beyond the turning circle, the remains of the rocket testing gantries and Needles viewpoint can be found. At this point, we are about 120 metres, or 400 feet, above sea level. If you look straight ahead of the bus, you will get a good view of Allen Bay and the Needles Park. In 2012, the Olympic torch made its way on the chairlift as part of the relay for the 2012 London Olympic Games. In a few moments' time, we will be at the stop for the Needles Old Battery, the entrance to which can be found at the end of the slip road to the left of the bus stop. On the spit on the other side of the Solent, and relying on good visibility, you will see Hurst Castle, which was completed in 1544 as one of a chain of coastal fortresses. Hurst Castle was one of the most advanced of the artillery fortresses built by Henry VIII. It was used as a prison for eminent 17th century captives, and later strengthened during the 19th and 20th centuries. Its situation at the narrow entrance to the Solent, where the ebb and flow of the tides create strong currents, put would-be invaders at its mercy. After his incarceration in Carisbrooke Castle here on the island, Charles I was imprisoned in Hurst Castle in 1648, before being taken to London for his trial and execution. During World War II, Hurst was manned with coastal gun batteries and searchlights. Opposite Hurst Castle, on the shore of the island, you can see Fort Albert, which was built in 1856 and formed another part of the 19th century defence system against the French. Still largely intact, it has been, in part, converted to luxury accommodation. This was one of the test sites for the Brennan torpedo, an ingenious, wire-guided weapon from the early part of the 20th century. Down to your left is a wonderful view of the celebrated coloured sands of Allen Bay. These sands first appeared on record in 1790, and the Victorians were the first to visit in large numbers, to view both the natural coloured sand cliffs and the stunning landscape. The Victorians were also the first to fill various shaped glass bottles with the natural sand, and to create sand pictures. Naturally occurring cliff falls provide the source for the sand, which is professionally collected, thus the number of available colours can vary from year to year. The cliffs are made up of the mineral quartz, and the 21 different colours that are visible are all tinted by varying amounts of minerals that are naturally present. Use was also made of the white sand, which was quarried, stored at Yarmouth, and taken by schooner to Runcorn to make plate glass. It was also taken to porcelain factories in London, Bristol, Worcester, and the West Indies before the trade ceased in 1851 in favour of French sand. There was once a pier at Allen Bay. It was built in 1873 to allow Victorian paddle steamers to land passengers there. Traffic became less frequent after the First World War, and the pier was eventually declared unsafe in 1925. The pier was destroyed in the winter of 1927 and never replaced. In a few moments we will once again arrive at the Needles landmark attraction, where we will stop briefly before continuing our journey back towards Totland and Yarmouth. This is also the stop for Route 12 towards Mottiston, Bryston, Shorewell and Newport.
that price quantity. Just push it. Yeah.
Where are you going, darling? Is she going at the front?
Let's get shaded here. Yeah. I might do.
That is what that said.
Yeah.
And so, why would you point this out? But I already knew that if I were to look at it. Well, I didn't need to know.
So you don't need anything.
It's not.
What do you need?
What?
What do you need it to do? Yeah, well, I never said that that was to live. You do need to live. Exactly right. You don't need anything. Yeah, just go on. Alright?
Spray the paper for me.
But every minute you do go on.
Contrary preset in the I can only listen to music after we are going. It's like the way we are counting down. But we just really running down the back and we have let it come in.
Okay, how do you listen to music when it's going on?
That's because there's more the signal away.
I know, do you?
As we leave the Needles and Allen Bay behind us, now is the ideal time to mention two of our other seasonal services which you may find interesting. From right we have the Downs Breezer, which explores the eastern side of the island, taking in some of the island's most spectacular views of the island and mainland, as well as serving some of the island's premier tourist attractions. In Shanklin, you can hop aboard our Shanklin shuttle bus service, which links Shanklin bus station, the railway station, Shanklin Esplanade, Shanklin Chime, and the picturesque Shanklin Old Village. Operating dates for these two services are as specified in our timetable, or you can always check with your driver or at the office in Yarmouth bus station. Over to your right, you can see the Tennyson Monument, celebrating the achievements of a notable local resident, and now in the care of the National Trust. Often overlooked, however, is another famous native of Freshwater, Robert Hooke. Born in 1635, from poor family and disabled himself, he was nonetheless the most advanced scientist of his age, and many modern machines are the result of his ideas. Among Robert Hooke's inventions were the iris diaphragm in a camera and the universal joint in a motor vehicle. He was also the originator of the word cell in biology. Another of his inventions continues to work as effectively as ever in the 21st century, for Robert Hooke was the inventor of the watch balance spring. The name Totland means protruding prominent land. The road on the left, opposite the War Memorial, will take you down to Totland Bay. This unspoiled bay is a shingle sand composite, and ideal for walkers. The bay is also home to the Waterfront Pub, which specialises in seafood and Mediterranean cuisine. From the bay, you will also see Totland Pier. The pier was completed in 1880 by the Totland Bay Hotel to attract tourists to the area. Today, the pier is undergoing restoration to bring it back to its former glory and once again bring more tourists to the area. Of Colwell Common on your left is the stop for Colwell Bay. Colwell Bay is the ideal place for those seeking the quieter side of the seaside. The water here is shallow and warm, making it perfect for swimming. The bay itself is 2 miles long and comprises of sand and shingle. There is also a beach shop, restaurants and deck chair hire. This part of the island has always been well defended from enemy invasion. At one point there were 7 points of defence on this side of the island. These were the Needles Batteries, Hatherwood Battery, Warden Point Battery, Cliff End Battery, Fort Warden, and coming up on the right are the remains of the extremely well defended Golden Hill Fort. A 6-sided structure, Golden Hill was a land rather than sea defence fort and acted as a barracks for the gunners manning the nearby batteries. Whilst operating, the fort even had its own hospital, which can still be seen over to your left. Constructed between 1863 and 1868, this remarkable listed landmark was used by the Army until 1962. As well as being home to luxury apartments, it is also reputed to be home to a ghost. The ghost is believed to have been a World War I Sergeant Major who was hated by his colleagues. He died after accidentally falling down a flight of stairs and breaking his neck. Accidental or not, we'll let you decide for yourselves. We will soon be approaching the stop for Ford Victoria, which is situated approximately half a mile down the lane from the bus stop. Fort Victoria was completed in 1855 to complement Hurst Castle as defence force against the threat of French invasion. By 1890 it was used as a mine depot by the Royal Engineers, and during both World Wars the fort again formed part of the island's defence system. The site was decommissioned in the 1960s and was latterly used as a location in the BBC rendition of Les Miserables. The remains of the fort now house a cafe, along with several visitor attractions, including a planetarium, a model railway, a reptilarium, and an archaeology centre. We are now coming into Yarmouth and will shortly pass over the modern swing bridge, which opens hourly throughout the summer months to allow boats to moor in the naturally protected harbour. The Brettel Handbook to the Isle of Wight refers to a ferry between Yarmouth and the hamlet of Norton to facilitate communications. In 1858, a causeway was built across the estuary and a swing bridge was put in place to complete the link to Freshwater in 1860. The bridge was eventually replaced, and in 1987 this modern swing bridge opened to the public. Remains of the old bridge can still be seen to the left of the bridge. As we approach Yarmouth bus station and the end of our journey, we would like to thank you for travelling on the Southern Vectis Needles Breezer. This is the interchange point for Southern Vectis services to Newport and our island coaster service towards Ventnor, Shanklin and Sandown. If you wish to leave any feedback, then please feel free to pass your comments on to the driver or at the office in the bus station. Alternatively, you can leave any comment